I've always loved Peyton Manning. I've always loved the way he played. I love the way he carried himself. I certainly loved his commercials. But I also always thought he's a tiny bit overrated. That all of this talk of Peyton Manning being the greatest quarterback of all time and better than Joe Montana and better than John Elway and better than everybody that's ever played, better than Tom Brady. I always thought, let's pump the brakes on that a little bit. And people, when I would express that sentiment, people would hit me with, oh, my God, how disrespectful you are to being Peyton Manning. You're a hater. If Peyton Manning played for your team, you'd love him even more, and you would never say those things. And I would sit there and go, oh, my God. If people heard the things that I said about my real favorite players, I grew up a hardcore Indiana Pacer fan in Indianapolis, Indiana. My dad took us to ABA games. There were many players on the Pacers that I absolutely hated and talked major smack on. I used to call, as a kid, the local radio station. When I was in junior high and high school, I'd call and go out because the Pacers were terrible. I'd call and go off on them all the time. Billy Knight was my favorite player. But when he played poorly, when he did dumb things, I went off. And it's like we have this society now where you can't say anything negative about anybody, because if you do, you're a hater and you're a bad person, and that shouldn't be allowed. And so here's Peyton Manning, someone who's had a tremendous career. And I wrote earlier this season, watching Peyton struggle at the end of his career, when all of his physical gifts have left him, that's when I've enjoyed Peyton Manning the most. That's when I have had the most respect for Peyton Manning. And once it became crystal clear to everyone that, you know what, he's going to finish behind Brady in the quarterback ratings, maybe we've gone a little overboard. Once that became clear, I really have no criticism of Peyton Manning. What I've always criticized about Peyton Manning was the overhype, and was the feeling that somehow his one Super Bowl, which came on the back of the defense and him not playing that well during the playoff run. And then if you look at his playoff performance and his playoff record, consistent, even when he was at Tennessee, struggled in the postseason and in the big games. I always just thought it was great. How can you say this guy's better than Tom Brady? And as I'm sitting here talking this through, I almost think I want to flip back and say Mark Kisler and these guys in Denver are right. Given Peyton's track record in the playoffs, why would you go to him? He's never been a great playoff quarterback. Never. He's always struggled in the postseason. Now his physical gifts are diminished. It makes even less sense. It would be crazy, I think, at this point. Love him to death. Love Peyton Manning. Respect his family and what they stand for. Love all the commercials. But it would be crazy to allow him back out on that field as the starting quarterback. You know what the definition of insanity is? Doing the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. As it relates to Peyton Manning, we've seen what he does in the playoffs, and it's not very good. And so now here's a guy who's clearly at the end of his career. His health is in terrible shape. He's got this cloud over him now with these allegations about HGH. Why send that guy back out into the storm? I've just talked myself into a strident opinion on Peyton Manning and the Denver Broncos and what they should do with their quarterback thing. It's a no-brainer. You stick with Brock Osweiler.